HMS Thetis Disaster. On June 1, 1939, HMS Thetis left Birkenhead for diving trials in Liverpool Bay, carrying 103 men, only 4 of whom would survive. The submarine was carrying double her normal crew because shipyard workers and company executives had come along to watch the tests. War with Germany seemed imminent, so the Navy had rushed the schedule. Lieutenant Commander Guy Bolus commanded the submarine. He had written a formal complaint about the overcrowding, but officials overruled him. At 2 p.m., Thetis submerged to begin testing. The crew needed to check if water could get inside through any openings. One of these openings had 2 doors, one on the inside of the submarine and one on the outside facing the ocean. An indicator light said the outside door was closed, meaning it was safe to open the inside door to inspect it. Lieutenant Frederick Woods opened a small test valve and saw only a trickle of water come through. Satisfied it was safe, he ordered the inside door opened. This was a fatal mistake. The indicator was wrong. The outside door was wide open to the sea. Seawater exploded through the opening with tremendous force. Men in the front compartments scrambled backward as the water rushed in. They tried to close the emergency watertight doors to seal off the flooding, but couldn't. Shipyard workers had left tools wedged in the doorways. Within 4 minutes, the entire front section was underwater. Everyone in those compartments drowned. The weight of all that water pulled the Thetis down. She hit the bottom nose first and settled at a steep angle, her tail sticking 18 feet above the surface. The 99 men who had made it to the back sections were alive but trapped. Rescue ships arrived by evening. At low tide, they could see Thetis's tail above the water, tantalizingly close but impossible to reach. The men inside knew they had roughly 36 hours of breathable air. The submarine had a small escape chamber that could fit 2 men at a time. Just after midnight, 2 men successfully escaped through the chamber. But they made a mistake with the valves that cost precious time. When the next group of 4 men tried to use the chamber together, one became wedged in the narrow space. It took 6 hours to pull him back inside. By morning, the air was turning bad. Carbon dioxide was building up faster than anyone had calculated. Men began gasping for breath. Some grew confused and disoriented. Others simply slumped against the walls, too weak to move. On the surface, salvage ships attached cables to the exposed tail and tried to lift Thetis, but the cables snapped under the weight. Inside the submarine, men used whatever strength they had left to tap SOS signals on the hull. The tapping continued through the morning. By noon, it had grown weaker. By 3 p.m. on June 2nd, just 25 hours after the flooding began, the tapping stopped. All 99 men still aboard were dead from carbon dioxide poisoning. 4 months later, salvage crews finally raised Thetis from the bottom. Inside, they found notes scratched into the paint where dying men had tried to document what went wrong. The Royal Navy made sweeping changes. All submarines received equipment to evacuate entire crews. Torpedo door indicators were completely redesigned to prevent false readings. Most importantly, trial crews were strictly limited. Never again would a submarine carry twice her normal crew. USS Thresher Crew. On April 10, 1963, USS Thresher departed for deep diving tests off Cape Cod with 129 men aboard, none of whom would return. The nuclear submarine had just completed 9 months of overhaul at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. During the overhaul, inspectors documented several hundred deficient welds in the submarine's piping system. But the shipyard was 3 months behind schedule, so supervisors approved them to meet the Navy's deployment deadline. Lieutenant Commander John Harvey commanded the submarine. 17 civilian technicians from the shipyard joined the crew to observe the trials. The USS Thresher was designed to operate deeper than any previous American submarine, making these tests critical for validating her capabilities. At 7:47 a.m., Thresher reported reaching 400 feet with everything normal. She continued down toward 1,300 feet, checking in with escort ship USS Skylark every 15 minutes. Everything seemed fine until 9:13 a.m. At around 1,000 feet, Skylark received a broken message. Experiencing minor difficulties, have positive up angle, attempting to blow. Then static. USS Skylark's sonar operator heard rushing air. Then he heard the submarine breaking apart. One of the bad pipe joints had burst. Seawater sprayed into the engine room and knocked out the electrical system. The reactor shut down automatically. Without power, the USS Thresher couldn't drive herself back up. The crew tried the emergency system to blow air into the tanks and force the submarine up, but the airlines had frozen from the colder temperatures in greater depths. The USS Thresher kept sinking past 2,400 feet. As Thresher sank deeper, the pressure became unbearable. The tremendous pressure crushed the hull instantly. All 129 men died. Navy cameras later found debris scattered across the ocean floor in pieces no larger than a dinner plate. The Navy suspended deep-diving operations for 6 months. All submarines received new equipment to prevent airlines from freezing. All pipe joints now required stronger welding. Kursk disaster, K-141. On August 12, 2000, the Russian submarine Kursk prepared for torpedo exercises in the Barents Sea with a damaged torpedo that would kill all 118 men aboard. The Northern Fleet was conducting its first major exercise in 10 years, with President Putin scheduled to review the results personally. 2 weeks earlier, a practice torpedo had been dropped during loading, causing a fuel leak. The weapons officer reported the problem, but the exercise schedule couldn't be changed. The damaged torpedo stayed in the tube. On the morning of August 12th, the crew was preparing to fire practice torpedoes. At 11:28 a.m., the damaged torpedo exploded inside the submarine. Everyone in the torpedo room died instantly. Kursk dropped toward the ocean floor 350 feet below. 2 minutes later, the heat from the first explosion reached the other torpedoes stored nearby. 5 to 7 of them exploded in a massive blast that registered on earthquake sensors in Alaska. 95 more crew members died immediately. 23 men survived in the back section of the submarine. They gathered in the furthest compartment from the explosions, where the lights had gone out. In complete darkness, Lieutenant Captain Dmitry Kolesnikov wrote by feel, "There are 23 people here. None of us can get to the surface." The submarine had settled on the ocean floor tilted at an angle. The survivors tapped SOS signals on the hull. They could hear rescue submarines overhead trying to dock with their escape hatch, but the tilt made connection impossible. Water leaked slowly into their compartment, and the temperature dropped to near freezing. British and Norwegian rescue teams offered help within 2 hours, but Russian command refused all foreign help for 5 days, insisting they could handle the situation. The Russian rescue submarines kept trying but couldn't connect. Inside, the 23 survivors were running out of air. They had oxygen-making cartridges, but on the second day, working in total darkness, one sailor dropped a cartridge into the water on the deck. It caught fire instantly and consumed all their oxygen. All 23 men died within seconds. Norwegian divers opened the hatch 9 days later. They found Kolesnikov with his final note in his pocket. It ended. "It is too dark to write, but I will try by feel. It seems there are no chances, 10 to 20%. Russia accepted international rescue assistance after the disaster. The damaged torpedo type was removed from service. All submarines received better escape hatches. USS Scorpion Disaster, SSN 589. On May 21, 1968, the USS Scorpion was returning home to Norfolk after 3 months in the Mediterranean. On the journey home, the crew reported a problem. Several torpedoes in the torpedo room were making strange noises and getting dangerously hot. Commander Francis Slattery requested permission to stop and inspect them, but Naval Command ordered him to continue. Scorpion was already a week overdue, and the Navy wanted her home. The submarine had been overdue for major repairs for 2 years. Her emergency systems had failed inspections multiple times, but she was still classified as combat-ready. Scorpion was due at Norfolk on May 27th. She never arrived. The Navy announced she was simply delayed. Their underwater listening stations had already detected an explosion on May 22nd, but they kept this information secret. The recording told the story. First, a torpedo motor started inside the submarine. 91 seconds later, the hull collapsed. One of the overheating torpedoes had turned itself on. Commander Slattery immediately spun the submarine around and accelerated, which should have automatically shut the torpedo off. But this safety system had been disconnected during maintenance to save time. The torpedo exploded and the blast tore through the hull. The USS Scorpion sank in 90 seconds. At crush depth, the pressure collapsed what remained of the damaged hull instantly. All 99 men died. The research vessel Mizar found the USS Scorpion 5 months later. She lay 11,000 feet down, 400 miles southwest of the Azores. The force of the implosion had driven the engine room 50 feet forward into other sections. The Navy made torpedo inspections mandatory regardless of schedules. Safety systems could no longer be disabled during maintenance. Submarine overhauls became required and could not be postponed. K-278 Komsomolets. On April 7, 1989, Soviet submarine K-278 Komsomolets was cruising deep in the Norwegian Sea with 69 crew members who would face an impossible choice: burning alive or freezing to death. The submarine was on a routine patrol at 1,266 feet, near her maximum depth. 3 weeks earlier, an inspection had found a damaged high-pressure air line in one of the rear compartments. The line needed immediate replacement, but Soviet Naval Command postponed the repair to keep the schedule. At 11:03 a.m., that damaged line sparked and caught fire. The fire spread rapidly through the submarine's ventilation system. Electrical cables burned, releasing thick, toxic smoke that filled the compartments. The reactor shut down automatically, cutting all power. Captain Evgeny Vanin ordered an emergency surface. The submarine shot upward and broke through after 11 minutes. But surfacing didn't stop the fire. For 6 hours, the crew fought the flames while the submarine drifted on the surface. The fire reached 2,000 degrees. The intense heat began warping the hull. Seawater started pouring through the buckled metal. The men faced a terrible realization. The submarine was going to sink, and they had to choose: stay inside and burn to death or jump into the freezing ocean. At 4:30 p.m., Vanin gave the order to abandon ship. 69 men jumped into 38-degree water. Several life rafts failed to inflate. They hadn't been serviced in 2 years. The men treaded water, watching their burning submarine. Within minutes, the cold began taking hold. Fingers went numb. Swimming became harder. Some men stopped moving, too cold to keep going. Komsomolets slipped beneath the waves at 5:08 p.m. Soviet rescue ships arrived 2 hours after the sinking. By then, 34 men had already frozen to death, floating in their life jackets. Rescuers pulled the remaining men from the water, but 8 more died from hypothermia despite warming efforts. Only 27 of the 69 crew members survived. The Soviet Navy made major changes after the disaster. All nuclear submarines received upgraded firefighting systems. Life raft maintenance became mandatory. Deep-diving submarines received better escape equipment. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones and drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.